Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial. Today we will talk about grids and how we can apply them in our web page. So first of all, everyone please download the files. If you don't have them or you cannot see them for some reason, please let me know. So the file should contain two folders, a CSS file and an image folder, and an index.html file. The CSS folder should have two CSS files, main and normalized, and the image folder should have the dog.jpg. So now let's open our text editor. Okay, and now we want to drag the whole folder into it, so then we can see it on the left side. Now, before we start, I'm going to show you how the final product would look like. As you can see, we have the navigation, and each item is equally spread across the screen. So let's get into it. We will start by opening our index.html. Now, perhaps you're wondering what is a grid. A grid is a structure that makes sure that everything is well placed on the page. This will make more sense when we move into our grid.css and we start defining it. Okay, so now because we want to use the navigation and we want the navigation to be our grid, so then we say that our navigation we follow the class grid. Okay, now you can think that the width of the screen it's 100%. Now, if you want to take half of the screen, that will be 50%. So in this case, we have 5 items in our navigation. Now, if we want to place these 5 items into the screen, which is 100%, that means that each of the items will occupy 20% of the screen. So how do we do this? Well, we start by opening a div tag, and we said that the class will be col-2 of 10. Now, I'm going to explain what this means. Col is a short name for column, and we are saying I want to grab 2 columns out of the 10. It's like saying I want to grab the 20% out of 100%. Then we close the tag on the first element. Okay, now this will occupy the 20% of the screen. But what happens with the other 80%? Well, we need to place the same thing, div class col-2 of 10 for the other items. So in this case, we make sure that the whole item, all navigation items are evenly distributed on the screen. Now, another thing that you see I'm doing is that I'm indenting everything, and I do this because we want to make sure like our code is readable for later on, or if someone wants to see your code, they can understand it. And also if you run into problems later on, it will be easier to debug. So you will see over time that indenting your code and having it well structured, it will just make it really easy in the future. So now we finish by placing our last item, col-2 of 10, and we close our div tag. Alright, do you have any questions so far? So as you can see, we're saying that all of these, the navigation, will be 100%, and each individual element will occupy the 20% of the screen. Now, we'll create a grid.css file in order to style or to give the structure to our grid. Now, Maybe you're wondering why we want to open a new grid CSS file. Well, this is because when we add, if we add the grid into our CSS, our main CSS, maybe our structure will get overrated. So we don't want that. We don't want our main, which is in charge of styling, to break our grid. So let's start by just make a simple link to the grid style sheet. Now, to make things clean in our folder structure, we will place our grid in the CSS file. Then don't forget to save the file. We always want to save the file, otherwise we will not be able to see the changes. Now, as you can see in our CSS file, we don't have the grid, so we will have to create it. If we do a right click, new file, it will create a new file. Now, let's save it right away. And now you want to make sure that it's in the CSS file. And we will name it grid.css. Okay. So now, before we start to styling our grid, we need to do a simple step. We open square brackets, say class, exponent character equal to call dash. Then we open brackets, float left. This will align everything to the left. We will say that the padding will be 0 and the text alignment will be in the center. Now, what this means, class equals to call, it means that we will grab an element that is a class and that starts with column. We will apply these attributes. Now, as you remember, here in div class, column 2 of 10, well, we're saying, okay, we're selecting the class and it starts with call dash, so we will apply these attributes. Now, what about the 2 of 10? Well, we'll make sure we will define this by saying class, which is represented by a dot in CSS, call dash 2 of 10. We open brackets. Now, remember, and we set the width to 20%. Now, as you remember, I said that the whole screen width will be 100% and each individual element will take the 20%. Do you have any questions why it's 20%? Alright, now what will happen if we want to use another structure below the navigation? Well, we have to clear everything from the first grid in order to do a new grid structure in our web page. So how do we clear the grid? Well, we start by calling the class, which is grid, saying that after the grid. Now, what will happen after the grid? Well, the content will be empty. We will display it in a block and we will clear both. This is very important for you. This is a very important step, otherwise you will not be able to use the grid. Now we have to specify that all objects on this selector, the class equals to call dash, follow the border box model. So what is the border box model? Well, in case you want to put two border boxes next to each other, you will have to use this model because it will force the browser to render the box with the specified width and height. It will include our content, padding, and border. If you don't do this, the CSS will take it as the content box model. And what this does is that it will have the default width and height properties and it will just include the content, excluding the border and padding. So it is important for you to do it. Now let's see how we do it. We put asterisk comma, asterisk after, comma, and asterisk before. We open brackets, and then we say WebKit, box sizing, border box. Now we say mouse, box sizing, border box, and finally box sizing, border box. Now, what does WebKit mouse means? Well, as you may know, there are 5 main browsers. There is Chrome, Safari, Mozilla, Internet Explorer, and Opera. Now, you want to make sure that your website is visible or it has the same style for each one of these browsers. So WebKit is used by Chrome and Safari, Moz is used for Mozilla, and box sizing without anything is used by Internet Explorer and Opera. If you want your website to be responsive for all types of browsers, you have to specify what browser you're meant to use that style for. Now, let's save it and let's see the results. Well, as you can see, our navigation now is using the whole screen. Do you have any questions so far? Alright. Now, what will happen if we resize our page? Well, the elements get stuck on top of each other. This is not a good user experience. But CSS has something called media queries, and what they do is that they tell the browser that, okay, so when the width of the screen gets into a certain size, let's change something. So how do we translate this? Well, we start with an at media max width 49 em. As I say, we're calling the media query, and we're saying, okay, when the max width is in 49 ems, let's do something. And in this case, we'll change the column because our navigation is here. We'll change the width to 50%. Now, when we save the file and we go to our web page and we refresh it, as you can see, each one of the items now is occupying 50% of the screen. Now, if you want to know what M means, well, M is a measurement or a unit that it's relative to the font size of the element. So, for example, if our font size is 16 pixels, well, if we multiply 49 by 16, we will get the number of pixels. So M is just relative to the font size. Now, if we want to make sure to occupy or our website to be fully responsive, so it's visible for each one of for all screens, either a phone, which is the pixels are like 350 in width, what do? Well, we say add media max width 21 ems, and then we do the same dot call 2 of 10, and now the width of each one of the elements in the navigation will be 100%. We save it. Now, in order to make it visible for a phone, we'll have to do one more thing. So if we go back to our index and then we go on top, we will add a meta tag. This meta tag will contain we will set the width to the device that we're using and set the initial scale. So how do we do this? We open a meta tag, and then the name will be viewport, the content of the page, of the width will be equal to the device width. And as I mentioned, the initial scale will be 1.0. Now, content width, in the content name, we're saying that the width that we're using will be equal to the device width. So if we're using a phone with the width 300 pixels, well, now those 300 pixels will be 100% of our width. In this way, our navigation or our grid will be responsive to all the devices width. And we're setting initial scale to 1. This is to make sure that when we open our website on the phone, it doesn't scale like crazy. So this creates a really nice proper size for the font size. Now we save the file. If we go and then we refresh it, we will not see change because the browser cannot go in a short screen. However, Chrome has a nice built-in tool on the web which is called in-web browser developer tool. So if we do right click and then we do inspect element, as you can see, this nice little thing, the console, pops up. This is really good if you want to debug your website in case you have a problem with anything. Well, this is the way to go because you can inspect each one of the elements and see the CSS. So it will be easy to debug, but that will be for another time. Right now we want to focus on what will happen for our website if it's on a phone. Well, here on the left we see a phone icon. If we click on it, you can see how our browser gets shifted to like a grid system and this tiny window. Well, this tiny window represents our website, like if we're looking at on a BlackBerry Z10. We refresh the page to make sure that the changes are available. So now we can see the changes. Now let's try it on a Nexus 4. Whoa! Sometimes there is problems with this tool. So let's change to Nexus 5. As you can see, it's proper. Now apparently the screen needs to be even smaller. So there you go. An Apple iPhone 4 has the screen small, and you can see how the changes from this media query are that stack the navigation into different rows. Now, does this look like our final product? Well, it does. The website is responsive. However, the color of the background of each of the navigation, it's different, right? So if we wanted to make the same, well, let's go and open our main CSS, okay? And because we're working with the navigation, we say nav a, what a, because each one of the elements on the index, as you can see, it's an anchor tag, which is a link, okay? And then we say like the width of this navigation will be 100%. What this is doing is that the background of the anchor tag will occupy the whole width. But because we're using a grid and we're saying that they will use the 20%, then this 100% it will be relative to the 20%. So this way, when we go back to our web page and then we refresh it, now the navigation occupies the full thing. Now, if we exit the Chrome developer tools from here, now you can see that our website looks like the final product and it's responsive for different screens. Do you have any questions? Okay, thank you very much. If you run into any problem or something, please let me know. Thank you.